Are you ready? Ready to bring a revolution to your relationships? Ready for the experiences on your dating adventure to evolve? Ready for more passion, intimacy, connection, and love in your relationship? Ready to heal past relationship wounds? You're in the right place. I'm Alan, the love engineer, and this is the Relationship Revolutions podcast. In this series, you'll get guidance and tips from me, interviews from other relationship experts, insights from couples who already have a great relationship, and other mind-opening conversations. Arneen, welcome to Relationship Revolutions, where today we don't actually know what we're going to talk about. We're just going to talk and see where the conversation goes. As you're a dating and relationship coach as well, based in New Zealand, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's answered one of my first normal questions, which is where are you? So the other one would be, how are you?
Oh, well, yes, that's correct. I'm based in Auckland, New Zealand. For now, I do run away to different parts of the world, but this is where I live. And how am I? I am doing pretty well. I was just obviously sharing with you how I had a few kerfuffles the last few days, injured my leg. But I'm great otherwise. Yeah.
Excellent. So if you could define the world of dating relationships over there in New Zealand, just in case it's a little bit different to over here or over in the States, how would you define it right now?
Oh, bless. Yeah, look, I think as someone who's dated all over the world, except maybe the UK, really, I would imagine from what people tell me, there are common denominators, there are similarities around what dating is like in I think all these places, but I would have to be very honest with you and tell you that when you have the Kiwi culture as a layer and mixed in with the dating culture as is, it makes things very slow and very chill and relaxed. And so, for those of us who are very intentional about dating and relationships and have a very strong end goal in mind, I do think that the dating culture is probably slightly more conservative in the sense, not necessarily conservative values, but conservative in the sense that it feels a bit limited. A lot of people feel very limited here in terms of the dating pool and the kinds of people that they're meeting and getting to know. And so it can become very easy, and you can get saturated in the Kiwi way of doing things very, very quickly, which does not involve a lot of effort. It's quite a lot of coasting, if I'm honest. So yeah, and look, it's a smaller country, right? So you've got fewer people generally, and it's almost like a little subculture that exists within the within the existing dating culture. So that's how I would describe it. Yeah, quite relaxed and different to how dating is in America for sure.
Interesting. So, for those of us who may be listening and have never been to New Zealand and had zero contact with the Maori culture, what is the difference between Maori and, shall we say, us over here, or even the white guys that came over to New Zealand and kind of stole it?
Yeah. Well, I can definitely tell you that. Um, I mean, the Maori culture, just like in many other countries where you have an indigenous culture that is still very much present in the country itself, it is it's more sacred. There are a lot more communal family values. The Maori culture is very much a collectivist culture versus the people that came over and changed things, as you say, which is more of a Western um, independent sort of a culture period. And yes, that absolutely bleeds into relationships, by the way. But yeah, so the Māori culture is it's still very very much preserved. It's still there's there's a sense of purity around the Indigenous culture here in New Zealand, and I can definitely say that it's very, very much, yeah, communal, family oriented, very much like people based, spiritual as well. You know, the Maori culture
Yeah.
has a very beautiful spiritual anchor and element to it. And yeah, and the people are very much connected to, you know, mind, body, spirit, that essence of what spirituality is. And also, you know, in their relationships or in their family lives, you know, there is a lot of strong attachment there, right?
Yeah.
With family, and naturally that bleeds into the family values as well. So yeah, community is very, very important to the Māori people, and for the rest of New Zealand, I would say, yeah, look, the culture here is it's easygoing, it's relaxed, sometimes a little bit too relaxed, and that doesn't necessarily mean that the people are always relaxed. You know, they could be stressed, they could be human. There's things going on all the time, but yeah, it's just like life is just it's fast paced if you want to make it fast paced, but I mean it's otherwise I would just say slow. I had someone ask me on a date not too long ago, you know, what's it like in living in New Zealand? And I'm like, it took me longer than I probably should have to answer the question. I just said it's quieter, it's less chaotic, it's slow, and yeah, more relaxed, more even keeled. Um, so that's how I would sum up culture, really. We have great food, we have beautiful nature, it's very pretty, and the summers are incredible. And when it comes to the people, I've had a lot of friends who are not from here, some of my closest friends, who have described it in a very similar way. Just very chill, very relaxed, and I don't think that they mean that in a good way necessarily. So I think people are just very, very comfortable here. Like the way of life is, you know, it's autopilot. So if that's the kind of life that, you know, you like living and the kind of people that you like surrounding yourself with, then you'll be.
And you just happen to be male and single, come on over.
Yeah, look, I've been joking about this for years, but I feel very passionately about it. We have a man drought here, 100% for all the ladies. I feel bad for us. Seriously. Yeah, seriously. We have a lot of expats, as you call it. A lot of people from Australia, the UK, Canada, and the US less so, but still Canada, the US, you know, come over and want to live here and want to stay here, and most of them want to stay here because of how pretty it how pretty it is, or because they come here for a job or they come here to travel. So there's definitely a place for everybody in New Zealand for sure.
It
Yeah.
is a lovely place to be, I must admit. So I was there 20 years ago now.
Mm,
Seems like a long time, even though in some ways it feels like yesterday. But what I find interesting when I look at different indigenous cultures, whether it's Maori, Aboriginal, Hopi, or the other Native American world, if you like, they still have a lot of the traditional sort of the man is the provider, the protector, and the woman is the nurturer and looks after the children.
mhm,
And we don't have that in the modern Western world, shall we say.
mhm,
And I do think that sometimes that has a bearing on the style of relationships that we have, or even the style of life that we have.
mhm.
Is that something
Yeah.
you've noticed over there, or?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked me that because I was actually reflecting on this after I got back from Texas not too long ago. I think I got back late January it was. And I was just thinking about how I have such a soft spot for Southerners, and you know, I was telling people why I really love that part of the US, and I had no idea I would love it so much before I even went there back in 2017. And so the two places that I keep going back to in the South is Texas and Louisiana. And so, you know, I've had people in the US ask me when they're like, "You're from New Zealand? What the hell are you doing here?" I'm like, "Why?" and and so the more I was honest, and the more I sort of was sharing with people in public, I came back and I was like, wow, I feel like kind of restricted here. I love it. Like I love being in New Zealand, but at the same time, I feel like I'm missing out on something, right? And I knew that that was the case from a lifestyle and probably opportunity perspective, but even more so in the context of relationships, which is where I'm going to answer your question. And so my answer has two parts, right? So there's directly answering your question around, within the more indigenous Maori culture, for example, are those traditional gender roles and perhaps more of the masculine and feminine traits and qualities embraced more and probably embodied more? And I would definitely say yes. I also, women that I know who are Indigenous and Maori and live in New Zealand are also incredibly strong women, strong, capable women. So there's actually a celebration as well of a woman's strength and her endurance and her capability to, manage children and raise a family. And so I definitely think those traditional values are still very much embedded within the Indigenous culture, and probably that we see less of that outside of that because the rest of New Zealand is like anywhere else, it's more westernized, right? And so you have less of that probably ingrained generally in the dating pool. When I say the dating pool, it includes everybody who's, out there and available for dating. And so yeah, so when I was saying that there was subcultures within living in New Zealand, it's interesting because we only have the North and South Island. It's not a very big country. I think we've got maybe like, don't quote me, probably about like maybe 4.5 to 5 million now. We've had a lot of people migrate the last 2-3 years after COVID. The traffic, to the point where the traffic is noticeably horrible, and it's these sort of the melting pot, as I call it. It's the mixing of different cultures that come here, and especially with a lot of people migrating from Southeast Asia and the UK, I would say these are the two areas of the world that we get the most people coming and moving for work, moving for opportunities, moving for family. So you see that a lot as well, right? There's like a multiculturalism within a small country, which definitely bleeds into the dating life. So I think we have like a blend of both. But in the more collectivist cultures, those traditional roles and the embracing of the masculine and feminine dynamic is probably more of a natural occurrence and more of a natural reality as opposed to outside of them. Yeah. Then you've got the generational, you know, factors too, but that's not just in New Zealand. I think that's everywhere. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I definitely
definitely.
our choice of relationships or who we're gravitating towards or not to a certain degree. I think within the collectivist cultures period, and I know because I was raised in one, there are just certain cultural norms, right? That are the social norms. And because they are the cultural and social norms, therefore automatically they are, a reality that you almost just continue really to operate in, as opposed to letting yourself play around in the gray area a little bit more, or have more autonomy maybe, or color outside the lines. There's another metaphor. So yeah, so that's probably the best and most honest way I could answer that question. Yeah.
Interesting. As you say, there's a man drought or a man shortage over in New Zealand.
Yes.
I'm guessing that over there, a good man would be the prize rather than a woman. And the reason I say that is there's a lot of shorts, reels, YouTube stuff that has a strong feminist vibe to it that says the woman is the prize. And then I saw one that says, well, okay, that's fine. What if it's a lesbian couple? Oh, they're both the prize. Well, if they're both both partners are a prize, and men are so rare, why is a good man not a prize? And they couldn't answer it.
I love that. Hmm. Well, first of all, I think a good man is absolutely a prize. I think a lot of people, a lot of women, I say people because I'm not just going to assume that everybody who's watching and listening to this is straight and cisgendered. So people and women, but especially women, if you are heterosexual and you prefer a man, then I think a lot of women don't identify a lot of the qualities that a good man, or a man who is the prize, and I do think he is. It's about appreciating it, right? But you need to identify that in order to really embrace it and then appreciate it. And so I can tell you that a lot of women are just very disappointed, and for good reason. But sometimes, and I see this come up a lot with just women in general who are dissatisfied in relationships, period, or dissatisfied in their dating lives, period, it can become very difficult to adjust our expectations of men when we overfixate on the standards, right? And so part of my role as a relationship coach is actually, it's not very publicly talked about, but is actually helping people get to a place where their expectations are actually managed and synergized with the standards that they're expecting. So what ends up happening is, women end up being disappointed, and so the standards go down, 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 because they're only getting what they're getting and what they're experiencing. And therefore it just forms this belief, somehow, the subconscious belief that, well, good men don't exist, or they're not out there, or they don't exist in the dating pool, or whatever it is, whatever the belief is, right? Which of course isn't true. I don't believe that. I mean, plenty of good men, but we need to be, I guess, shifting our perspective and our understanding of what the prize is for people individually and specifically, as opposed to just, I see a lot of content as well about, what does it mean to be a high value woman and a high value man, and I understand, like, there is a lot of merit to a lot of the things that are being said in terms of, character traits and somebody's character, and valuing their values, and, for example, how they show up in life, and all those things are very important, don't get me wrong, and they absolutely should be. There should be a baseline in terms of, if a quality human, somebody who brings those qualities to a relationship. But I think, going back to what I was saying, why I think there's an actual man drought down here is honestly, genuinely, because there's just less variety in potential suitors out there. So with it being a smaller population, with there being this subculture within, where I live, it's kind of like, you take someone out of a small town. So say you have like a small town cultures, you could have small towns in the UK. There are plenty of them, especially in the States, there are plenty of them. And if you apply that to a country, you're going to get, it's almost like this invisible vacuum that exists within the people, how they interact, relate, communicate with each other, that becomes the norm, right? And so when the norm feels like it's low effort, or it's too relaxed or too chill, it becomes there's like a more nonchalant way to go about relating to people. And that is 100% a Kiwi thing. I've never seen this anywhere else. I'm serious. I've never seen this anywhere else. And so, when that, when it's our tendency to be that way, which is a Kiwi way of doing things, and then you have women who really want the high value man, or the prize, or, the guy that's going to provide, and then, tick all these other boxes, it becomes difficult to, quite honestly, I can say this as someone who's also non-biased. I really am, because I see all the perspectives. It becomes very challenging to really have that, and have the progression of a new relationship go further than just dead end dating, right? Or like a few months. And that seems like it's really a huge frustration. And
Yeah.
then on top of that, you add the layer of, imagine, like single parents going out and trying to date, dating over 40, for example. When you start adding demographics into that, becomes even more difficult, right? And even though that's a global challenge, it's just harder in countries that are generally smaller, and a lot of people who are interesting or different or unique are only here for 6 weeks, 2 months, 6 months, a year, and then they're off, right? And that's part of living somewhere so beautiful. You get a lot of tourists, you get a lot of people who come here for school, come here for work, and they either decide that they want citizenship and they want to stay, they fall in love with it, they don't want to leave, or they've got to leave, right? so I think the spice or the dynamic really in the dating culture down here, and to just loop back around to close off what I'm going to say, is really just the reality of being somewhere that is like New Zealand, which is why I still think there's a man drought. So yeah.
Interestingly, you mentioned about dating in the 40s and dating as single parents. I actually found dating easier in my late 30s, early 40s than I did when I was 20. But I think that's because I was a different person.
Yeah, well, I guess my question for you there is, that was going to be my first question before you answered it, was, do you think that that's part of your growth and evolution as a human, and
Absolutely.
and as a man? And my second question was, how much of that do you think was influenced or shaped by being in the UK? Because you've lived there for most, if not all of your life, right?
I'm 47 now, so I've lived here for 46 years, and that 1 year was sort of divided between Australia and New Zealand and a little bit of Asia. So living in the UK, yes, that's heavily influenced it. And like you, I've had dates all over the world and dated women from all over the world as well. And I think some of the changes between me then and now is, firstly, I know who I am. And I've grown into that a lot. I had no confidence when I was 19, 20. There's a big part of me that didn't even want to live then. And I put so much of my own value on having a job or a career and having a girlfriend. So if you lose your job and your girlfriend at the same time, you take a nosedive into the pit of despair. It's a bloody horrible place to be. I don't go there anymore. And I think that trip to Australia had a big difference on me. One of the things I found was reading a magazine article on the flight out about the young Aboriginal lads in Alice Springs that were heavily drinking every night and fighting and playing all sorts of unhealthy music or whatever the article said, which I found kind of interesting. Why? So when I worked on a cattle station in the Northern Territory, I ended up working with some Aboriginal guys. So it's not on the tourist trap or anything like that. So we just had a real conversation. He says, one of the influences is because the white man's come along and taken the land. And as a result, a lot of our culture has been killed. He says, one of the things that we used to do as young men is have a tribal initiation ceremony where you go out in the bush on your own. Nobody's coming to save you. And you've got to fight for yourself, fight for your life. Because let's face it, there's lots of things that want to eat you out there. He says, when you come back from that, you know you're a man and it's all celebrated. That's been lost. And that made me think, well, how do we know in England when we're a man? And there is no answer to that other than, well, I got pissed when I was 21. I got pissed when I was 18 as well. But you don't feel any different. Well, once the hangover's gone away, of course. It's like, and then I saw something online a few weeks ago that says the time when he realizes nobody's coming to save him and he's got to do the work himself.
Mm.
And that kind of resonated with me because after my divorce and the first relationship after that, well, where the whole world came crashing down, there was nobody coming to save me, and I had to do it all myself. And I think that's had a big impact on who I am as a man, as a person, as a dad, and as a partner within a relationship. So I actually looked at what was important to me, what I wanted to be, how I wanted to show up within that relationship, how I wanted to show up as a dad. And then you get this challenge of, oh shit, how the hell do I become that? And you have an adventure along the way.
Mm.
And it just happens that after that, you have more confidence, more grounded in who you are. And because you know who you are, you can make decisions a lot easier. You're not seeking validation from anyone. You're not looking to please anybody. And I think that those things have a massive impact on the kind of women that I can attract.
Mm. I would agree. But I also, I mean, yeah, I really do. I really do agree. I know one of the absolute core qualities or traits that I look for in my ideal partner going forward, now in my 30s, not in my 20s, now in my 30s, is that, I want somebody who understands what it's like to go through life and go through difficult challenges. And I am in two minds about how I view resilience. I'm somebody who's very resilient, been through a lot. However, it's the quality and the trait that somebody has understood what it's been like to go on a journey and go through a recovery, a growth, and evolution process without necessarily needing somebody to hold their hand or provide the answers for them. I think it's a very unique, special, and really beautiful trait to have in a human, but to have that in a partner is very important to me because
Yeah.
it's a signal to me that this person has cultivated their independence, their growth, their evolution without having to necessarily have crutches and women to rely on as a crutch, that they've actually been in their own lane for a period in their life. They've, really shaped themselves in a way that is independent and individualistic. And, and the reason those things, for example, are really important to me is because I really value authenticity, resilience, longevity, somebody with a good head on their shoulders, somebody who is able to have healthy perspective. And so working with people, even just like the last 9 years before I transitioned into coaching, anything I've ever done professionally has always been with people. So getting to know people and becoming very good at people, I can definitely tell you that when somebody has not had that period in their life, right, or had the same grapple with life in the same way, then there are aspects of their character that I've noticed that still need developing, or they might have a different perspective. They might not be as realistic about certain things. They might just accept a lot of things at default and not be a critical thinker in the same degree, right? I could go on and on about this, but what I'm saying is that I think it's really special to have a partner or somebody that you choose to be very close to in your life, that you want to build something with, that has been through that. And that can be your story could be anything. You could have overcome addiction, you could have gone through a toxic relationship and a divorce, you could have all of those things, you could have had a rough past to some degree. But yeah, having the journey, the capacity, the experience of having to really figure things out on your own is, I think, a really great thing, and something that I relate to a lot, which is probably why I appreciate and embrace it more. But yeah, but I love learning that about you, and I love that that was your answer too. And I also agree that these things absolutely would have shaped you. I think the reason why I ask, how much of where you live has maybe impacted or shaped maybe how you show up in the world, who you are, especially how you maybe show up in relationships as a man, especially, is because I know a little bit about your past. You've shared that with me before. And also because I know that what I know to be true about the UK is that so much of tradition is still enforced in the whole country. Your government systems, the way people are, the culture. Yeah. And I know how much of a big deal it is for a lot of people. Some of my closest friends are from the UK. My best friend just moved to Didsbury from Manchester, and she grew up in Manchester for most of her life before she came here in New Zealand where we met. And so I've learned so much through her, and you see things happening on the news. Like you had Brexit, for example, right? Years ago. That would have impacted. I'm very well aware of how how the socioeconomic situation is divided in the UK, right? And so I'm always curious as to whether or not that impacts people to the degree that I think it does. And for me, it's what I think is that it probably affects them beyond just, here's what I do for a living, here's how much money I make, here's the tax I pay, here's the lifestyle I have. I feel like relationships are at the core. I think I might have told you this before, but I really do think that we don't probably give this as much weightage or attention. But I really do think that how you show up in life a lot of the times is directly proportional to how you show up in your relationships. And so how we're shaped by how we show up in life, a really big part of it is environment, right? So that could be obviously home where you live, but more so the city you live in, the subcultures that exist, yeah, the country that you live in, of course. And so that's always an interesting one. So that's what I was contemplating when I asked you that question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the mistakes that women tend to make, especially in the younger years, with when they're seeking a partner, is they look for that knight in shining armour.
Mm.
The only thing is, when his armour's all shining and whatever else, it looks really, really pretty, but it also says he's not battle tested. You have no idea whether he's a winner, whether he'll stand up for you, or whether he'll turn his tail and run the other way to keep his armour all shiny. But then there's the guys that the armour's a little bit dented, battered, tarnished, and they're still here. They're battle proven, they're battle ready, and they're not going to disappear.
Yep. I love that. But you just had a metaphor that just came out of your head. That was great. No, it really was. I'm not laughing at you. I'm just like I'm giggling because of appreciation. That's great. I love that. What I would love to get actually a little bit deeper on as you say this is I'm curious in your experience and your honest opinion. Let's go with the knight in shining armor concept. Let's go with that. Do you think that a lot of women who are looking for the knight in shining armor, do you think it's more about wanting the man to rescue them and be a protector, or do you think, in your experience, that it's more of the projection that women can have, where because we humans do this, but women do this a lot with men, and it does lead to a lot of disappointment and a lot of bypassing, which I'll probably get into as we progress in this conversation. But the projections are basically the way I look at it is projecting all the things that you want a man to be about, right? Or traits, qualities, whatever it is, but not really looking at who they are, not really exploring like the depths of that. Because it's very easy to say that here's like this little checklist or a template. We all do it, that I have. And it's very easy to have maybe your own definition of well, what is a white knight? Like, what is your knight in shining armor? Is it somebody that actually has the qualities of nobility and respect, and somebody who is willing to provide without you having to ask, and somebody who is really valuing women and their femininity, and someone who is instinctually ready to, fight for a relationship and build a secure relationship? Is that what you're looking for? These are the questions I ask my clients, for example. Or is it just the idea, the ideal, which can be shiny object syndrome a lot of the times? You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think it does depend on the woman a little bit. And obviously her upgrowing is going to have a drastic impact on that. But I think a lot of it actually comes down to the human nature to a degree, and also society's conditioning, where we are, in a sense, taught to look to authority for rules, regulations, decisions, and what we're going to do. And then that inner voice and intuition gets damped down when we're children. So we're seeking an external solution to an internal problem. We don't know who we are. So we want to be seen, but it's too scary to put our full selves out on display. So how do people really know us anyway? So we want to. There is part of us that wants to be saved, maybe, but more importantly, we want to be safe. And I think women want to be. They definitely want to feel safe, especially in a man's presence, because there's so many stories about men do this, men are a predator, men are this, men are that, men are the other, men are not safe, men are masculine, so men are toxic, and all this crap. And if they haven't grown up with a healthy male role model, be it a father, be it a grandfather, be it an uncle, doesn't matter. If they haven't had that, they don't know what it's like to experience it. So they want to feel safe. They want to feel seen for who they are, not just their body, not just a physical plaything, so to speak, or not just, a potential mother, or in this day and age, a potential provider for some of the guys. And they want to feel special as well. And if you look back at the days of the knights in shining armour, Sir Lancelot and King Arthur and all those guys around the round table, back in those days, they would have these jousting competitions to fight, and so a lot of the time, the prize was a woman. They wanted to win that woman's hand or appreciation. And I think the women still want that in some reptilian part of their brains.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that women can very easily overlook other qualities and traits that actually probably support more of the qualities they actually need in a partner? They may not always be aware that they want, but that they actually need in a partner to cultivate real safety, to cultivate real security, to cultivate a good foundation, to cultivate, and actually, one of my favorite topics right now to talk about, receivership, right? Like that's a big, I see this in a lot of women who are feminists, self-proclaimed or not, who are very career driven, who are entrepreneurs, who are playing that masculine role and in the habit of that, right? Because that compounds too, which we can, of course, elaborate on if you want to, but that obviously compounds too. And then we do develop blocks in receivership, which is why I'm bringing that up. So I just named a few traits here, but of course, it can be other things. So yeah, just going back to that question, do you think there are a lot of great qualities and sustainable qualities and really high value qualities that women can overlook a lot of the times when they're just fixated on the ideal, whatever that could be? Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's I think one of the challenges women who are in their masculine energy and so used to that it's become normal, they're still seeking a masculine male, but a male that's more masculine than they are.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Because what should happen is when they receive that masculine energy or be in his presence, that automatically go into or step into their feminine energy, which brings the balance between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, same with a magnet, like poles push each other away. So if she's in a masculine, trying to attract a masculine man, it's not going to work. Unfortunately, a lot of feminist women don't want to hear that.
I know they don't. I have my own opinions on it, and you know what? I would have had a different opinion on it even a mere probably 3-4 years ago. But I, first of all, am a woman who has learned, and this has been part of my growth journey in the realms of love and relationships. I am a woman who has learned how to appreciate more masculine traits in a man. And trust me when I tell you, there's been a lot of deconditioning that's happened behind the scenes and in private that has allowed me to step into the space now where I actually really crave it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
because it's the man's responsibility to show up in that healthy masculine energy,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the woman's responsibility to receive it and step into her feminine. If
Mm-hmm.
she's not willing to take that step, it doesn't matter how masculine he is, it's not going to happen
Mm-hmm.
because she doesn't feel safe within herself.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. I know this can be the other way around as well. When I know I've had these experiences where a man is resistant or struggling to receive love too. There's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff going on underneath.
Yeah,
A lot
because
of
we
stuff
get
going on.
conditioned that being nurturing or loving and showing emotion and stuff like that, or being vulnerable, is a sign of weakness. And we don't want to be seen as weak. Also, if we open our hearts and let a woman in, we're also opening up ourselves up to and giving her the tools to destroy us. Because that call of the siren that wants you to take you down into the depths and devour you and leave you there, and that call of the divine spirit can sound very, very similar until
Yeah.
you've learned to tell the difference between the two.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a lot of younger women get attracted by the perceived confidence of the bad boy. But when
Mm-hmm.
you try and call them to be emotionally available
Mm.
and make some kind of commitment or anything like that, he's gone. Two things are not the same. Sometimes we have to
Definitely not.
learn what we do want by receiving what we don't want.
Yeah, or what we don't think that we want.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I also think, just going back to your comment earlier about, going down in the dumps. Oh, wow, that's my cat Amber. She's got a complaint. If you can hear that howling, that's her. And yeah, there's an element of seduction to that, of not only just valuing seduction, but what a women can often do without this being conscious. Is the whole courtship phase, the whole wanting to be alluring to a man, wanting to like embark on being an active participator in the game of seduction, right? Because there's an element of performance there. There's an element of, I've got to display myself in a certain way in order to be attractive. I see this happening a lot within dynamics that are toxic for women, because the bad boy is attractive to a lot of people, right? And is sexualized to a lot of women, right? So then it's like, wow, like that's really attractive. And I'm just, I'm feeling really sparked up. Like I'm feeling really tinkly or whatever, whatever, right? And then we go and we're entering the space of, in my opinion, a lot of the superficial performative behavior and intentions. And therefore, I think when that happens, truly what I think is that we're not spiritually connected in those moments, first of all. And then secondly, I was going to say, it takes us off the path to focusing on what's actually really important, which is all about your spirit and your soul and all the work that a lot of people need to do, and the spirit and energetics and emotional work of being available, being able to identify, being able to show up, being able to participate, being able to receive in healthy relationships. So curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, firstly, the bad boy's attractive and all the nice guys don't understand why the heck the women go off with them, because they know that they're going to get hurt. But at the same time, when a woman's looking for a man to marry, she's looking for a nice guy, just not too nice.
Oh, jeez.
And then women also say that they want a gentleman with the traditional chivalrous values. It's like, hang on a minute, make your minds up what you want. But ultimately, I think they want all three within the same man at different times, and for him to know which part of him's got to come out at which time.
Yeah. Yep. When I asked the question I asked about the knight in shining armor or the white knight, there is a very real reality of what the white knight actually is, and the traits and behaviors and intentions that they display, right? And then there's the concept, the ideal, the ideal, and then the, I guess, benchmark, if you will, because it is a benchmark of the knight in shining armor, which and a lot of the times that's conditioned from when we were really younger, when we're watching Disney movies and and all of that. I have some thoughts on the whole Disney movie concepts too, because a lot of those movies were very questionable, especially Beauty and the Beast, very questionable. I find nothing romantic about that movie. She's locked up and she has Stockholm syndrome. It's not very cute. But just as an example, right, I think that there's just a lack of awareness and maybe consciousness. If this was all conscious, we would all be aware of it. But that's kind of how, as a woman who's working in this space and realms of relationships, I often look at what the ideals are in women and the things that we want, or the things that we think we want, and then the kind of men that we're choosing, and there's absolutely, not for everybody, of course, but for a lot of us, there 100% is a gap in, and very clear distinction that there needs to be more clarity there, right? Or there's got to be things that we need to work through in order to have an actual white knight versus the knight in shining armor, which really is, as if you really think about it, is just a subjective made up ideal. Maybe you've adopted it from your mom or your best friend or your grandma or a Disney movie or whatever. But I think if we're going to choose a conscious partner who displays all those healthy traits that we really need as women, and that we do, a lot of us do want as women, and everything else, because they've got to display everything else if you're going to have a healthy, long, secure, happy marriage or relationship, then they're going to be ever so present as the actual white knight, and a lot of the times that man does not have a six-figure salary, or does not, dabble in the Rolex, and a lot of the times that, that man might have more than one job in order to make ends meet, or maybe driving a car that you hate, or whatever, whatever it is. I know I've just talked about all this materialistic stuff, but it's 100% still relevant.
Yeah.
It's still very relevant in this conversation. I have male friends who go through this a lot, even dating now, and so why I say it's relevant.
Yeah, because I think there's a minority of women all over the world younger ones and pretty ones that are being interviewed for clips on social media, basically saying they want a guy with a 6-figure income, a 6-pack, and 6 foot tall. Those things don't guarantee you've got a good man, any more than a bra size or a dress size guarantees that a man's got a good woman. But unfortunately, I think it's very easy to fall into that trap instead of digging down into what you truly desire and what's really important to you, what aligns with your values.
Yeah, I agree. I had a question come up for you.
Okay. Go for
Is
it.
that a nervous laugh or I'm
You
full
never
of
know.
them?
I'm sure you are.
Like, what's she gonna ask me? No. What do you wish more women would understand about men? And actually, there's a second question now. What do you wish more women would understand about men? And what do you think, based on your conversations, your experiences, your perspective, your outlook, working in this realm too, and probably across life, that women overlook a lot about men, where maybe if they didn't bypass those things or were more consciously aware of factoring those things in, that you think would actually help them have healthy relationships?
There's a couple of things for me. One is we want to feel like your hero, whether it be taking the rubbish bins out, dealing with a spider, or protecting you from some guy when we're out and about that we know is a bad boy that's only after one thing. Doesn't matter. We want to feel like your hero, and we want to feel appreciated for that. And something that I wish women knew about men, that we have the capacity to feel as much as you do. But for so long, we've been conditioned to dumb it down, suppress it, bury it, and just crack on with a job and be what we're supposed to be as a man. So they're the main things for me.
Thank you for sharing that.
A couple of others. One, we don't really care about your makeup. We really don't. A lot of the time, what I found personally is when a woman's in her feminine energy at the core of who she is, that shines out, and a great visual representation of that you can see in the movie Stardust. And if you haven't seen it, it's great. Watch it.
Yeah, I remember that movie. Has it got Ben Barnes in it?
I've no idea. It's got Robert De Niro in it. As Captain Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And but that shine is her natural beauty, and you cannot get that out of any makeup bottle or cosmetic surgery. We just actually want you to be who you are in your hearts. That's what's attractive.
That's so sweet, and I'm just smiling ear to ear because I just think that's so sweet. But I also can really appreciate how genuine that sentiment and that share is. And I think hopefully it feels reaffirming for the women listening to this to know that, because I can vouch for the statement and tell you how many men that I know, and actually some that I've dated and been in relationships with, who really have not cared about those things as much as we do, but not in a way where they're just necessarily dismissing it, but that there is an appreciation for your natural state. There is an appreciation for an energy, a quality about you that allows them to also feel safe, nurtured, cared for, supported, and actually feel good in their own leadership, right? And feel good about the instinctual tendencies that men have to take the trash out and feel like your hero. And and all of that. I think also, when you were saying that, I was smiling, but I was also thinking about how many of us, and I know this definitely was the case for me, who, didn't really have a lot of that modeled, right? Or didn't really have a lot of that around. And so sometimes it can be a journey for a lot of women for an internal conflict, really, an internal grappling that goes on, where we're not actually understanding that it's possible to have that and have that be consistent and not have that be, some magical unicorn um trait or experience that we can have in a relationship. The previous past version of me would, baby Arneen would probably, yeah, definitely still probably dabble in that if or carry those beliefs if there wasn't
Yeah.
a different path that was taken to conditioning, very active personal development work, very, a variety of healthy relationships to witness. So yeah.
Yeah, I think one more thing on that question is when we do things for you, whether it's open a door, whether it's pull a chair out, whether it's take the bins out, we're not doing it because we think you can't. We're doing it firstly because we want to,
Mm-hmm.
and why should you have to?
Mm-hmm.
Yet so often it gets rejected.
You sound like the men in Texas. Seriously. Do you,
Well, I haven't been to Texas, but I have been to Phoenix, Arizona.
oh, that I can't comment on. Texas and Louisiana I can comment on for sure. Well, the southern man. Yeah, you sound like the Texas man. I can, and I also just, I know I'm being cheeky, but I'm being very, very, very factual when I tell you that. I don't think I have been on a single date with anyone in New Zealand who was pulled out a chair for me and held the door open. And the fun fact is, I've actually never been in a relationship with somebody who is a and I think there's a reason for that, probably. But I'm not digging. I'm not taking a dig. I'm just calling a spade for a spade. And the reason I bring it up is because I just, I wanted to put a very, very honest and upfront emphasis on the fact that this level of just, oh, well, I don't have these things done for me, gets to us women when that becomes the norm, and therefore some of us, we just stop expecting it. It's just, we become a little bit more meh about about these qualities, right? And then and it's very easy for a lot of women to jump into the, well, I can do this myself, so why do I even, I'm guilty, by the way. I'm so guilty. So that's why I'm laughing so hard, because I'm like, I see a part of me in that, but also how true. And yeah, I just really appreciate your feedback on that. I think those are some really valuable answers.
So, tell us a little story of the journey to becoming the relationship coach that you are. How did that all come about?
Oh, I love this question because I can never answer this question without laughing, just because it was never a thing in my life or in my mind to be like, oh, when I grow up, this is what I'm gonna end up, or like when I graduated university, when I had my dream career, when I had actually a very freaking successful career at that, yeah, this is just a thing that's going to happen one day. This is what I'm going to end up segueing into, and be on my merry way of having a career transition into coaching. It makes me laugh because I could give you a list of at least 15 other things that I thought I was going to end up doing. I was 30, I'm 33, by the way. But yeah, the journey, it's a very long story, so I'm going to tell you the short version. And if anyone's curious, I was recently interviewed. The podcast episode, which will have to be in long form. What I can tell you, so if you want to tune into that, you also can. Next month, it'll go live. I think a big part of my story, to be completely honest with you, has been it's just something that I almost just very naturally fell into with all the jobs I've ever had across my entire working life. Like, I had got my first job when I was 15. I was working in a really popular men's retail store. It was always dealing with people. It was always, you know, being the person that a lot of people ask for unsolicited advice from. And obviously back then I was like, not the person that would give it to them. Not the person that would give it to them. But also growing up, I really was not somebody who, I think, really had a lot of modeling of what the expansiveness, the security, the healthy aspects really were. And so just not something that I think about. Not something as you're growing up that you really think about. You're going to school, you're watching your Saturday morning cartoons, you're going about your little life. But then as, as things started to really, I guess, progress in my own life, and this mostly happened in, of course, my adult life, every job I really had was about serving people, helping people, finding solutions for people. And when I started to really venture out in the world was when I was 23. This was exactly a decade ago. Crazy. And I moved to LA. I had 2 suitcases, an immigration paper, no job. I had like 2 contacts, no job, no place to stay. Booked this like random like shared Airbnb in the middle of like the valley in the northern part of LA, landing there as like my landing pod, having to figure it the hell out. And truly, that was the first really pivotal moment in my life where, one, I went out completely on my own. I mean, of course, I had, some aspects of support here and there, but went out completely on my own in terms of just dissecting and deconditioning everything that I once knew: environment, home, it could have been culture. Like, obviously, my family wasn't around. So many things. The friends that I had known and been friends with for a long time. It was the starting of a new chapter, but also having to really hustle and figure it out. And so I think that would probably be a really strong marker that really started, I would say, and I didn't realize until recently, probably the starting of my journey to becoming somebody who now is obviously very passionate about and really dedicated to this work, and is on a mission to helping as many people as I can transform their love lives and their relationships so that they can have the most expansive lives, the most abundant lives, the most deep and meaningful lives. And their pipe dream lives is what I call it. That was my first pivotal moment in my life where I went out the gate, did something everybody thought I was really crazy for doing, and doing it because the vision was so strong that I was like, this is my pipe dream life. I used to, in my teens, I used to watch all these reality shows, and they'd all live in LA. And I was never interested in the superficial aspects of it because Los Angeles is a very interesting place, but never interested in that, but always chasing like the dream, the sunshine, the opportunities. And what I didn't expect when I moved to California was that I was going to have almost like a death and a rebirth of what relationships meant to me, period, because I met the best people in the world. I really, truly did. I met some not so nice people, but they were very easy to not spend time with. And it was the first time in my life that I felt like I really built a soul family, really unintentionally, because I was still pretty young, I was just trying to figure it out. But they were all attracted to me, and I was all attracted to them. And, they were all transplants from Wisconsin, Texas, all these other places. And when I started to really pay attention to how I wished everybody would relate to each other, how I how I wished everybody would experience relationships, even though this was more in the realms, I'd say, of platonic friendships and relationships rather than romantic love necessarily, because I can tell you that the next few years is not gonna go down a very happy road in the romance department. Even though that what I was still figuring out, the foundations were really built. And I knew that I was doing something different, or that these people, like, they had something really powerful and different and unique and special and deep about them that made these relationships so different than anything else I've ever experienced in my life. And then for the next decade, it would still be true. And you know what, Alan, like, this happens, I swear, every time I go and live somewhere else, even if it's for like 3 months I spend in Hawaii, just coming back from Texas, I will meet at least one soul person that I will be like, who are you? Where'd you come from? Why did I not meet you sooner? And we'll be like this. We'll be so connected for the rest of our lives. And these relationships are so unique and special. And so that made me a lot more curious about relationship psychology, relational dynamics. I have a degree in psychology, so that's always been an area of interest for me. And I was really interested in a career that brought in human relationships and problem solving and making businesses better. And so naturally I went into HR, and that for the next 8 years of my life, HR and recruitment was my gig. And through working in different sectors, starting my career off in California, moving to San Francisco, like moving and really just moving my life along, meeting hundreds of people, and then adding value to thousands of people by the time I'd left my career a year and a half, 2 years ago. All these aspects of relating to people, all these aspects of my journey with people eventually was the glue that really cemented a lot of the growth that I had in my romantic relationships or my dating life. And then I was ever so curious about how I could be more expansive with life outside of work and life outside of, serving people, helping people, problem solving with people in this capacity, helping businesses. And then it was honestly, it was just really natural. I put myself out there and went out, and I was like, I know there's a man drought. This is a true story. I know there's a man drought. I'm going to go out and put myself out in the arena or the field. And you know what? Brene Brown has a really great quote. And I don't know if you've heard it, but she did this like Netflix special years ago. And she talked about how she doesn't want to take on the opinions or the advice from people who aren't out in the arena getting their asses kicked. And it forever stayed with me because I applied it to different contexts. But I'm going to preface what I'm about to say next to close off, my story and my how I came to doing this work. By saying that was I literally went out into the arena, yet another one, and just another area of relationships, to quite literally go out and get my ass kicked. That's what was happening. And I was, I'm gonna figure this dating thing out. Like, why is this a wild goose chase? Why is everybody complaining? Why is everybody heartbroken? Like, am I missing something? And I was clueless. I was absolutely clueless. And then I was like, okay, well, I was very intentionally single and healing and, giving myself that time and my space to really grow from a financial career aspect, all these things. And it was the one area in my life where I was like, all right, we need to figure out what this means for Arneen, right? So we go into the arena, we get my ass kicked. And that process taking, ended up, like I said, hundreds of first dates or hundreds of dates with so many different people. And eventually I just became so fascinated with everything that was going on in the realms of relationships, really. And I'm like, I just had this moment where I thought, wow, like, dating and love and relationships in the 21st century, what an experience. What a kerfuffle. What a world. And, and eventually wanting to have a break from getting my ass kicked, very intentionally wanted to truly dive into what depth, meaning expansion, security, stability, and most importantly, healthy, thriving relationships were all about. And I very, very quickly learned through going through the hardest lessons in life and love is that even my own experiences and perceptions and things I was taught was really misleading. A lot of the advice that I was given was really misleading and with really projections of a lot of the people who are around me, their own fears and insecurities and limitations. And so it was the curiosity that I think started it, and the really being out in the field, doing the work, having the experiences, falling down a number of times, and also rising in a lot of different ways that made me realize, wow, I really could see a lot of longevity in the work that I want to do with myself, firstly, in this space, so that I can, become the best partner and lover I can be, and really work actively on a lot of healing and detoxing and deconditioning of a lot of the unhelpful beliefs and patterns and emotional blocks that were stored in my own body, because that's where we store it. It's not in here, it's in the body. And and then that led me to becoming, as a lot of my clients say, the dating app queen, or or like the conscious relating Arneen, or whatever they like to say. People call me all sorts of things. Oh yeah, the fairy god. What was it? One of my first ever clients, she said to me, she's like, "Oh, yeah, I feel like you're like the fairy godmother of all healing and relationships." And so people can say all those things. They do. It's cute, but I think to summarize that, it was really just a journey of going through life and love and really deep pain and heartbreak and a lot of really unhealthy modeling that led me to my curiosity, and then eventually a lot of the very proactive work in this space. And although it started probably outside of the dating space, it ended up just naturally evolving into relationships as a whole, which included modern dating. So modern dating, relationship recovery, healing toxic relationships, and conscious relating are my three core pillars in the work that I do. And that's how Arneen got here. And
would you say that with these dating apps being effectively almost worldwide, we're almost spoiled for choice, and because of that potential of Mr. or Miss Perfect being out there, dismiss anybody who's not perfect?
I think technology has ruined our ability to bring the humanity back into how we relate to and select partners, period.
Yeah.
So I'll start with that because it's true. I think it's a tool, it's an aid, it can be very helpful, but I really do think that it has deconstructed a lot of our ability to focus on what really matters, but more importantly, connect with ourselves. It's such a crutch, it's such a buffer, it's such a distraction for many reasons, right? And so I think, just going back to your question, I think that it has, truly speaking, from the bottom of my heart, provided a tool and a resource for us to open ourselves up to putting ourselves out there and going through a selection process, 100%, and maybe meeting people in a more rapidly consistent way, right, than we normally would. And that's great. That accessibility it can be great if you're utilizing it in an ethical and and positive way that works for you. But from the bottom of my heart, I also truly do believe that what it's also done is provided a smokescreen and a barrier to what it truly, truly means to connect with and experience someone in all of their humanity. Because without the dating apps, we still had the checklist. We still had the things that we would contemplate that we wanted in a partner, or, in a knight in shining armor, or in our ideal person, right? But without technology, that wasn't always really a very conscious process. Anyway, if you really truly think about it, and everything we talked about. And so now that you add dating apps into the mix and technology into a mix, you've all of a sudden got unhealthy dopamine hits that we chase that we don't realize that we're chasing through technology. And dating apps is a really great example. Very profitable businesses. Bumble is my favorite dating app, but that doesn't mean that I am not aware of also the limitations that that's brought into my own dating life, right? When I was struggling with selecting the right people, for example. And it becomes harder. And so the reason I share that, although it's great for accessibility, a lot of the times, yes, it is a dehumanizing process because you're not actually getting to know somebody who get to know them. They become a means to an end. Because that's the process that you're starting off getting to know them. And unless you're a very conscious human and woke person, which most people on dating apps are not, sad to say, but they're not. That doesn't mean there aren't people like that, obviously, on dating apps, right? But I'm just saying that, yeah, most people are not like that. Unless you are truly, then you're going to go about it just like everybody else does, and it becomes a means to an end. It becomes that quick dopamine hit that you get with your swipes. It becomes a validation fix and a validation machine. And then you go out into the real world, as I say, and all of a sudden you're past date 3, date 4. Hopefully you're past that. That seems to be a challenge for most people. And say you get past the casual dating barriers or that casual dating or courtship phase. Say you get past, date 5, date 6, and you're trying to decide, is this person for me? Are they not for me? This is where we struggle the most, ironically, because to be honest with you, it's very easy for me to say yes to going on a date. It's very easy for me. It's not hard for me to date because I've done it so much. It's not difficult. But even as somebody who's had so much experience, the hardest thing is it's really figuring out, is this person my ideal partner or not? And this is somebody who, speaking of me, I've done the freaking work to the point where I'm so conscious that I know when they're not. But see, this process of learning, this process of selection means that you have to go on a journey with somebody.
Yeah.
You do. You can't avoid it. And this is where a lot of people get stuck. And so I know for me, up until, to be honest, even recently, it still comes up sometimes. Is my fearful tendencies do come up. But if I were to honor my own humanity and give myself self-compassion and really explore that for myself and understand, okay, I know this is present for me and this is true for me. I also ask myself the question of, how do I need to show up? How can I show up in a way that's more ethical, more human, more and when you are dating from that perspective and that practice, it becomes very difficult to not have a very objective view and call a spade for a spade when it comes to online dating and dating that involves technology, including dating apps, because I've had enough exposure and enough experience to know that my mental health, for example, has been impacted significantly at times with online dating. Not because somebody didn't swipe on me, but because somebody who I wanted to go on a journey on, or somebody who I wanted to explore things further with, wasn't honest with me. Because they weren't honest with themselves. And they weren't honest with themselves because they really don't know who they truly are, or because they haven't explored themselves to the depths that I have, or maybe they aren't as clear about who their ideal partner is. And so they've got the ideal, but not actually the conscious awareness of, what does that need to look like? How do I need to show up, right? Yeah. And so I think that's the gap too. I think a lot of people are experiencing that, but I'm not precious at all being like, I'm a dating and relationship coach, and I also have struggled with this and sometimes still do, and I just think it's important. The reason I'm saying all this and sharing all this is because I really think that is where the hang up is. I think that's where the problem is. If we were dating in a way that was more aware and conscious and humane and ethical, then absolutely you would have less broken hearts. Absolutely you would have more people who are educated. Absolutely you would have more people who are aware and more people who were being open-minded about how they choose partners, who they choose to love, how they choose to love, So long-winded answer, but yeah, that's what I got for you.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said for having some of the deep conversations early on.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you date somebody for 6 months and just kind of stay above this waterline of the iceberg, so to speak, and you haven't necessarily talked about values or boundaries or life direction, you date for 6 months, 2 years, think, oh, this is cool. How do you fancy getting married and having kids? And they say,
Mm-hmm.
I never want to get married and I never want to have kids. Well, you've just wasted 2 years of your life. Yeah, you've had a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
But have those conversations early on.
Mm-hmm. Well, I 100% agree. What I wanted to add to that, well, and I feel very passionately and strongly about this, by the way. So it may or may not come across, but I feel very passionately and strongly about this. I think that we have a seriously skewed understanding and, yeah, misconception, of course, of what intimacy really is, what connection really is. And because it's so much more easier to have somebody be a placeholder in your life, whether you're consciously aware that you're doing this or not, it's irrelevant because it's probably happening. If you're in dating apps and you're casually dating, it's happening, trust me. Casual dating is easier because somehow we think that modern dating we're in a better stance, we're in a safer stance, we're creating more safety when we're detached, when we're not investing as much, when we are having fun, when we are keeping things more surface level and lukewarm, because depth has become scary. Investing emotionally has become scary. Commitment has become scary. So therefore, consciously choosing is scary. There are barriers and limitations and blocks to it. And
Yeah.
and a really big piece of that is because of the accessibility. It's so much easier for me. And look, I have done this, but I've done it very respectfully. When I wasn't ready for a commitment or a relationship when I first came back out into the dating scene, oh yeah, years ago now, and I was really, really navigating the dating apps and therefore became a dating app queen. I was very honest with people I was meeting, and I was saying, look, like, it's not that I don't know what I want, but I'm so new to this, like, dating app and online dating space. I just feel like I need to do some figuring out. And so I don't know what I don't know. So it's coming into it like a, like with curiosity, but just not a lot of clarity. And so I needed to go through what I needed to go through to get the clarity. And some of that did involve getting to know people on a more casual basis. But when I look back and really reflect honestly, was that my preference? No, it was just the pace that they were comfortable going in, the parameters they were comfortable engaging in. And therefore, I felt like I was constantly having to adjust. And, I met a number of people who said that they were looking for a relationship, whether that was on the dating profile or, verbally saying it. And the actions are different. The blocks are very evident, right? And so it did create more distrust, more confusion. But when I eventually stepped away and then allowed myself to be single again and did even deeper work on myself, I now went to a place where I was like, okay, so irrespective of the mode in which I'm finding my person, what kind of a relationship orientation and structure do I feel as though is the healthiest for me, that's the best for my nervous system, that provides me with the most security, the most love, and all of this. And it was no longer just about the traits that I look for in a partner or the values that we share, but about whether or not somebody was showing up in that way in their life on a daily basis and had the willingness, right, and the commitment to going on that journey and building something really healthy, lasting, and meaningful. And I truly think that's what everybody wants. But fear and insecurity and uncertainty are the three biggest culprits that are perpetuating all the things that we see, whether that's a lot of people who are more emotionally unavailable, how that's become a culture in itself in modern dating. And that's a big block for a lot of people looking for something serious, whether that's, the shame and guilt cycle repeating itself because people feel like they're unworthy or that don't matter or that they don't look good enough, both men and women. Or it could be other things, right? But toxic relationships, you name it, right? We've got a lot going on in the realms of modern love these days. So yeah.
Interesting. So I think we're getting towards the end of this conversation, although I'm sure we could easily go on for another hour and a half.
Yes.
So for anyone who's listening to this that would like to know more about you or reach out and have a conversation, where's the best place for them to learn more or find you?
If you live in Texas, let me know. Oh my gosh. Honestly, I'm obsessed for many reasons. And if you've never been to Texas, you gotta go. Embrace the people because they're lovely. Everything really is bigger in Texas, and the food is incredible. It's unlike anything I've ever had. Now, to answer your question, yes, you can find me on Instagram at Hey Arneen. I'm usually hanging out on Instagram a lot. It's where I probably connect with my new followers and my community the most, and other people who are podcasting, working in this space, and are really passionate about the work that they do. I also host a podcast called The Big Life Podcast. It's a picture of me with a blue background, and you can find it on all major streaming platforms, starting with Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Yeah. And if you're on Instagram, then you'll or go on my podcast, you'll find me everywhere else. So I'll leave it at that.
Excellent. And we'll put all this stuff down in the show notes as well. So I would say, always like to end these conversations with the same question. And I don't give anybody any warning unless they listen to previous episodes, in which case I can't do anything about that. But the question is, as this podcast is called Relationship Revolutions, if there was one thing from your perspective that would bring a revolution or evolution to the world of dating and relationships, what would that one thing be?
Oh, what a great question. Oh, there's definitely a few things I can think of. But what feels the most right for me to share in this immediate moment? Let me tickle my brain for a second because there's a lot I can say. I'm going to come back to this because I truly believe that it is a solution and as well as a decision that nobody is ever going to regret, which is, I think, if I had to share one thing that I think will be revolutionary in your journey in the realms of love, self-discovery and committing to your personal growth and love. Because love and relationship is the most intimate area of your life, period. And the intersections and I always call it an invisible thread that connects love, money, and your life together, and everything goes on it. Love, money, sex, life. And the relationships are floating around in between. I genuinely believe that the quality of your life is dictated by the quality of your relationships, as well as the obvious things like your breathing, your health, you have oxygen, all those things. But these things truly go hand in hand, and the patterns that you're seeing in your life, at work, and your finances, and your relationships, it comes down to you at the end of the day, and how much you know about yourself, how deeply you can experience yourself, how deeply you can love yourself. And the deeper you go into self-discovery and the more you actively commit to doing work, your own work, so that you can show up as the best person you can be in your own life and in love, for starters, that is going to overflow into every relationship that you have. And it's no different for, your lover if you're partnered and you're listening to this, or you're single and you're still, trying to find your people or your person. Self-love, self-discovery, and personal growth, that's where it starts. And that will always be the one constant in your life. So as long as you have a great relationship with yourself and you continue to be curious about how to be better and how to love yourself deeper and how to know yourself more intimately, that is game changing. So yeah, so I'll leave everybody with that.
Love it. So if I could summarize that, then effectively it's knowing yourself, being yourself, and staying true to yourself.
Mm-hmm. And find out what you don't know about yourself. Find out where your blind spots are. Yeah, find out where your blind spots are. Find out how you can be better. It doesn't have to be about ego. Ego is based out of fear. So if you know how to remove ego from the equation and you commit to your personal growth and love, I swear to everybody and everything and all the gods in the universe and all the things, your life is going to freaking change. You're going to change, but your life is going to change. You're going to start attracting in all sorts of stuff, and you'll eventually see the knock-on effects. So whether you do that alone, whether you do that with a coach, a therapist, a mentor, whoever it is, it's worth it. So
Beautiful. I love it.
Thank you for having me.
So thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure, and we will have you back for round 2 at some point in a few months or next year or whenever the time is right.
Of course. Well, you know where to find me and everybody else does. So yeah, just sing out and yeah. And I guess we're going to have you on my show soon too. So yeah, if any of you are interested, then I'm sure Alan and I will just continue to have the conversation. So you can continue tuning in. So yeah, thanks for listening, everybody, and giving us your time and your ears.
Thank you for listening. And if you haven't already, please leave me a review on your preferred podcast platform. Click the like button and also subscribe so that you get the new episode notifications. I'm curious, what did you take away from this episode? Please share your takeaways with me. Send me an email to relationship-revolutions@theloveengineer.rocks.